Hey guys, tonight we're diving into ancient Greece, where the marble columns gleam under a Mediterranean sun and the gods are having their worst quarter in millennia. You're standing in the middle of Mount Olympus, watching Zeus pace back and forth in his throne room, thunderbolts crackling with each frustrated step. The other gods slouch on their golden chairs, looking like teenagers who just got their allowances cut. And honestly, you probably won't survive the sheer second-hand embarrassment of watching immortal beings try to understand mortal economics. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing our little bedtime history community span the globe. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're witnessing something unprecedented in divine history. Zeus, king of the gods, has just invented the concept of fiscal responsibility about 3,000 years too late, according to Athena's calculations. The problem started when mortals began forgetting to sacrifice properly. Those fat cattle and wine offerings that used to flow up Olympus like a divine food delivery service, they've slowed to a trickle. Apparently, humans discovered philosophy and started asking uncomfortable questions like, do the gods really need my best goat? The thunder god's solution is as simple as it is shocking: budget cuts. You watch him slam his fist on a marble table, sending cracks spiderwebbing across its surface. If mortals won't sustain us properly, he booms, then we'll sustain ourselves. Every god must find employment in the mortal realm. The reaction is immediate chaos. Aphrodite drops her mirror with a crash that echoes through the halls. Ares starts polishing his sword with aggressive strokes, muttering about becoming a personal trainer. Hermes zips around the room so fast he's leaving speed trails, already calculating delivery routes. But it's Dionysus who catches your attention. The god of wine sits perfectly still, purple robes pooling around him, a dangerous glint in his eye that usually means someone's about to wake up with a hangover and hooves. You lean closer as Hera speaks up, her voice dripping with disdain. Employment? We're gods, not grocers. But Zeus is unmoved. He's already drafted what he calls the divine austerity measures, complete with performance reviews and quarterly earnings reports. Historians still argue whether this was Zeus's genuine attempt at fiscal reform or just another elaborate prank, the kind that ends with someone turned into a constellation. The meeting devolves into what can only be described as a celestial temper tantrum. Apollo threatens to stop the sun until this madness ends. Poseidon creates a small tsunami in his wine cup. Artemis's hunting hounds start howling. But Zeus stands firm, lightning crackling between his fingers as he points at each deity in turn. 1 month, he declares. Find mortal employment or lose your ambrosia privileges. You follow Dionysus as he stumbles out of the throne room, already 3 sheets to the divine wind. His usual entourage of satyrs and maenads trail behind, equally confused by this turn of events. The god of wine, ecstasy, and madness forced to punch a time clock? The very concept seems to offend the natural order, but as you'll soon discover, When Dionysus decides to embrace mortal commerce, he doesn't do anything halfway. What starts as a simple wine shop will become the stuff of legend, the kind of legend that makes historians blush and economists weep. You trail behind Dionysus as he stumbles down the rainbow bridge, his divine glow flickering like a faulty neon sign. The god's usual swagger has been replaced by something between a sulk and a sway, and you can't help but notice he's already sampling his own merchandise, a bottomless amphora that refills itself with each sip. His leopard print himation is askew, and there's a grape leaf stuck in his curly hair that nobody dares mention. A job, he mutters, the word foreign on his tongue, like a poorly fermented vintage. Me, the god of good times, reduced to commerce. He spits the last word like it's corked wine. You watch him pause at the edge of Olympus, gazing down at the mortal world below, with the expression of someone about to jump into cold water. The cities sprawl beneath you like scattered dice, each one full of mortals who've apparently forgotten that their economy used to run on divine favor and burnt offerings. The descent is less graceful than you'd expect from a god. Dionysus keeps forgetting he's supposed to be conserving divine energy. Zeus's new austerity measures include a strict rationing of godly powers. So instead of materializing elegantly in the mortal realm, you're both taking the scenic route, which involves a lot of trudging through clouds that stick to your sandals like cotton candy. Halfway down, a satyr named Silenus catches up, wheezing and clutching a wineskin. Lord Dionysus, he pants, perhaps we could consider something simple, like being a tavern musician. The god's laugh is bitter as unripe grapes. Music, that's Apollo's racket. No, if I'm being forced into this capitalist nightmare, I'm going to do what I do best. He takes another swig from his amphora, and you notice the liquid inside has turned from purple to gold to something that might be pure liquid starlight. I'm going to sell wine, but not just any wine, wine that makes mortals understand what they've been missing. You reach the mortal realm just as the sun sets over Athens, painting the city in shades of honey and rust. The agora bustles with late-day commerce, merchants hawking their wares, philosophers arguing about the nature of reality, and citizens hurrying home before the wine shops close. The irony isn't lost on you. There are already dozens of wine cellars here, their amphorae lined up like soldiers. But Dionysus surveys the scene with the confidence of someone who's never had to write a business plan. First things first, he announces, suddenly energized by either inspiration or intoxication. Market research. What follows can only be described as the world's most chaotic focus group. Dionysus approaches random Athenians, manifesting just enough divine presence to be compelling, but not enough to cause immediate madness. Tell me, he says to a confused potter, what disappoints you most about mortal wine? The responses range from helpful to hilarious. One merchant complains about inconsistent quality. A philosopher launches into a 20-minute dissertation on the metaphysical properties of fermented grapes. A young bride whispers that she wishes wine could make her husband more interesting. Dionysus takes no notes. Gods don't need writing when they have perfect memory and questionable judgment. But you notice his eyes gleaming brighter with each conversation, like he's fermenting a plan in real time. The real revelation comes when you both stumble into an existing wine shop run by a gruff Corinthian named Alexios. The place smells of vinegar and broken dreams, with amphorae that look like they have seen better centuries. Alexios himself is the kind of merchant who waters his wine and then charges extra for pure vintages. Dionysus orders a cup, takes one sip, and his expression shifts from disgust to delighted revelation. This, he declares loud enough for the entire shop to hear. This is why mortals have forgotten the gods. They're drinking liquid disappointment. The evening spirals into what scholars would later call the Great Wine Tasting Incident of 432 BCE, though historians still argue whether it actually happened in 432 or if Dionysus just made time a bit wobbly. You watch the god visit every wine establishment in Athens, sampling their wares and growing more indignant with each cup. By midnight, he's gathered a following of curious drunks and opportunistic satyrs, all trailing behind as he denounces the sorry state of mortal viticulture. Tomorrow, Dionysus announces from atop an overturned cart, swaying slightly but maintaining godly dignity. Tomorrow I open the wine shop that will restore faith in fermentation. Wine that doesn't just intoxicate the body, but elevates the soul. Wine that makes you understand why the symposiums of old produced poetry instead of just hangovers. The crowd cheers, though you suspect half of them won't remember this promise come morning. But Dionysus remembers. Oh, does he remember? And as you'll soon see, a god's drunken business plan is still a divine mandate. You wake to find Dionysus standing in the middle of the Athenian agora at dawn, spinning in slow circles with his arms outstretched like a divine compass. His purple robes catch the early morning light, and several confused merchants setting up their stalls stop to stare. Perfect, he murmurs, pointing to a prime corner location currently occupied by a turnip seller. This is where destiny meets commerce. The turnip seller, a sturdy woman named Thessaly, is less than impressed when a god materializes in front of her cart. I've been here 15 years, she says, crossing her arms in a gesture that would make Athena proud. My mother sold turnips here, and her mother before her. You can't just... Dionysus waves his hand, and suddenly her turnips taste like ambrosia. The first customer who samples one starts weeping with joy. Within minutes, Thessaly has sold her entire stock at triple the usual price and is packing up with a dazed expression, muttering about opening a shop in Corinth. Location, 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 Dionysus says to you with a wink that makes your vision temporarily purple. The mortals understand this, even if they don't understand proper fermentation. But as you're learning, divine enthusiasm doesn't translate well to mortal bureaucracy. The moment Dionysus starts marking out his territory with wine-scented smoke, an official-looking man with a wax tablet appears. Permit? The man asks, his voice as flat as day-old beer. Dionysus blinks at him with the confusion of someone who's never needed permission for anything. I'm a god, he explains patiently. The official remains unimpressed. Divine or not, you need proper documentation. Form 771B for commercial ventures, Form 493Z for alcohol sales, and given that smoke, he sniffs disapprovingly. Form 298K for public displays of potentially religious nature. You spend the next several hours in what can only be described as bureaucratic Tartarus. The Athens municipal building smells of old papyrus and despair. Dionysus fills out forms with increasingly creative interpretations of truth. Under previous employment, he writes bringer of ecstasy. For business address, he puts wherever the party is. The clerk processing his application looks like she's developing a stress headache that no amount of wine will cure. Purpose of business? She asks wearily. Dionysus leans forward, his eyes swirling with all the colors of vintage wine, to remind mortals that life without proper intoxication is just existence. She stares at him for a long moment before writing down retail wine sales. The gods protest that this criminally undersells his vision falls on deaf ears. Meanwhile, the location issue becomes increasingly complex. The spot Dionysus claimed is apparently zoned for agricultural products only. Wine, according to subsection 47C of the Athenian Commerce Code, is classified as a manufactured beverage and requires a different zone. The gods' argument that wine is absolutely agricultural, it's grape juice that's achieved its destiny, doesn't sway the zoning committee. You follow him as he searches for alternatives, each potential location presenting new obstacles. The spot near the Temple of Athena, too close to a religious site. The corner by the fountain, reserved for water carriers. The shaded area under the olive trees, protected by the Olive Merchants Guild, who apparently have more lawyers than Sophocles has tragedies. The real entertainment comes when Dionysus discovers the concept of rent. Pay for space that exists whether I use it or not. He looks genuinely offended. That's like charging for air. The landlord, a shrewd man named Nicias, explains about property values and maintenance costs. Dionysus counters by making wine fountain from the man's well. This backfires spectacularly when Nicias tries to charge him for improving the water supply without permission. By noon, you're both sitting on the steps of a closed bathhouse. Dionysus nursing his infinite amphora and glaring at a stack of rejected permit applications. A helpful satyr suggests maybe trying Piraeus instead, but the god waves him off. No, it has to be Athens. This city thinks it's so sophisticated with its democracy and its philosophy. They need to remember what real culture tastes like. The breakthrough comes from an unexpected source, a street sweeper named Dorian, who's been watching the whole saga with amusement. You know, he says, pausing in his work, there's an old law about divine shrines. Any god can establish a temporary shrine for up to 1 lunar month without permits. His grin reveals several missing teeth. My grandfather was a priest, boring man, but he knew every loophole in the sacred texts. Dionysus's eyes light up like constellation. A shrine that happens to sell wine as offerings. You can practically see the gears turning in his immortal mind, lubricated by divine wine and mortal spite. The zoning committee is about to learn why it's never wise to frustrate a god with red tape. Tomorrow, the wine shop opens, permit or no permit. The only question now is how much chaos can be classified as religious expression. You arrive at the designated shrine shop location before dawn to find Dionysus conducting what might generously be called job interviews. The line of applicants stretches around the block, though you quickly realize most of them are Maenads, satyrs, and various woodland creatures trying to pass as human by wearing tunics backward and sandals on the wrong feet. A centaur has cleverly positioned himself behind a cart to hide his horse half, but the nervous tail swishing gives him away. Next, Dionysus calls out, lounging on a throne made entirely of wine barrels. He's set up an impromptu courtyard using borrowed tables and several strategically placed grapevines that definitely weren't there yesterday. The morning sun catches the droplets of wine that seem to perpetually hover in the air around him, creating tiny rainbow prisms that make everything look slightly drunk. A nervous young man steps forward, clutching a wax tablet with what appears to be references. "I've worked at 3 different wine shops," he begins, but Dionysus interrupts with a wave. "Can you tell the difference between wine that makes you forget your troubles and wine that helps you remember why you have them?" The applicant blinks rapidly. What? Dionysus sighs and marks something on his own tablet, which seems to be made of crystallized wine. Next, the parade of hopefuls continues, each more bewildering than the last. A philosopher applies for the position of wine contemplation specialist, arguing that proper intoxication requires Socratic dialogue. A dancer offers to perform interpretive movements representing the fermentation process. An elderly woman claims she can predict the future through wine stains, demonstrating on Dionysus's robes before anyone can stop her. "You will hire someone unexpected," she declares. Dionysus seems impressed until she adds, "Also, you should wash these more often." And you watch him reject candidate after candidate for increasingly arbitrary reasons. Too sober, too mortal, insufficient appreciation for the philosophical implications of viticulture. One promising applicant is dismissed for suggesting wine should be diluted with water, a cardinal sin in Dionysus's emerging business philosophy. The satyrs, trying to pass as humans, don't fare much better, especially when one's fake beard falls off mid-interview, revealing his goat face. By midday, the god is growing frustrated. "Where are the mortals who understand?" he laments, draining his amphora and watching it refill. "Where are those who see wine not as mere beverage, but as liquid transcendence?" A satyr helpfully points out that most mortals who think that way aren't reliable employees. Dionysus throws a grape at him. The breakthrough comes with applicant number 47, a middle-aged woman named Charis, who walks in carrying her own wine cup. She takes one look at the divine chaos, the half-hidden mythological creatures, and Dionysus himself glowing faintly purple, and says, "I suppose you'll be wanting someone who can handle the morning shift when you're too divine to function." Dionysus sits up straighter. "You're not afraid? Awed? Compelled to dance naked through the streets?" Charis snorts. I raised 4 teenagers and ran a tavern. I've seen worse. She proceeds to outline exactly why his current setup won't work. The health inspectors will have opinions about the hovering wine droplets. The neighbors will complain about spontaneous music, and the city guard takes a dim view of customers who turn into dolphins. You're hired, Dionysus declares, then pauses. Wait, can you even see my true form? Charis squints at him. Purple fog, occasional antlers, eyes that make me think of every poor decision I've ever made. Yes, I see you. My grandmother was touched by Pan once. Left the family with what she called mythological vision. Mostly it's just annoying at mystery plays. The rest of the day becomes a strange mix of practical planning and divine nonsense. Charis immediately takes charge, sending the satyrs to find proper furniture, no hooves on the merchandise, and organizing the space with an efficiency that would make Athena jealous. You help sort through the remaining applicants, finding a few gems among the chaos. A young man named Alexis, who can calculate prices in his head faster than Hermes can fly. A pair of twins who claim their wine tasting abilities are professionally refined, and an elderly scholar who insists he's writing a treatise on the economic impact of divine intervention in commercial markets. But it's the final applicant who provides the day's best entertainment. Just as the sun begins to set, a figure in an elaborate disguise appears, fake beard, oversized cloak, and a voice artificially deepened to comedy. I am definitely a mortal, the figure announces. I wish to work in your wine establishment for normal mortal reasons. Dionysus doesn't even look up from his tablet. Hello, Hermes. The messenger god drops his disguise with a laugh. Can't blame me for trying. Do you know how boring delivering messages has become? Tell Sparta this. Tell Athens that. At least your shop will have interesting disasters. Dionysus considers this for a moment before grinning. Fine, you can handle deliveries, but no stealing the merchandise, no replacing wine with water as a prank, and absolutely no racing the customers. Hermes agrees so quickly, you know he's already planning to break at least 2 of those rules. As darkness falls, you survey the assembled staff, one pragmatic mortal woman, several semi-disguised mythological beings, a few confused but enthusiastic humans, and a god who's already sampling tomorrow's inventory. Historians still argue whether this constituted the ancient world's first equal opportunity employer or just the most poorly planned human resources disaster in classical antiquity. You arrive at dawn to find the street already packed with curious Athenians, drawn by rumors that spread through the city like spilled wine. The shop, shrine, has transformed overnight into something between a temple and a tavern. Dionysus stands at the entrance, wearing his finest purple robes that seem to shift between solid fabric and liquid wine depending on the angle. Behind him, Charis is frantically trying to organize the chaos while satyrs hang garlands that may or may not be singing. Welcome, mortals, to Dionysus's divine vintages, the god announces, his voice carrying that peculiar quality that makes you simultaneously want to party and repent. Today only, free samples of wine that will change your understanding of existence itself. The crowd surges forward, and you realize with growing alarm that nobody thought to set up any kind of queue system. The first customer, a stern looking magistrate, approaches with the skepticism of someone who's seen every scam in the agora. Dionysus personally pours him a cup of something that glows faintly pink. Our house special, he explains. Sunset over Olympus. The magistrate takes a suspicious sip, and his expression transforms from doubt to wonder to something approaching religious ecstasy. I can taste. Is that the laughter of nymphs? He whispers. Dionysus beams. Just a hint. We also have notes of ambrosia and a finish of forgotten dreams. What follows can only be described as organized chaos rapidly devolving into divine mayhem. The free samples flow freely, too freely, as Charis keeps trying to explain the concept of portion control to a god who considers moderation a personal insult. Each wine offers a different experience. Philosopher's folly makes drinkers speak only in profound paradoxes. Merchant's memory causes spontaneous recollections of every good deal they've ever made. And poet's passion results in customers breaking into impromptu verse. You watch a proper Athenian matron taste Aphrodite's whisper and immediately start giggling like a teenager, her stern face flushed with unexpected joy. Her husband samples Warrior's Rest and begins weeping about a battle from 20 years ago, embracing a former enemy he spots across the shop. The emotional whiplash is giving you second-hand intoxication. The twins hired yesterday prove their worth by somehow maintaining order at the serving station, though you notice they're using some kind of synchronized pouring technique that borders on performance art. Alexis, the mathematical genius, has abandoned traditional pricing in favor of a complex system based on the customer's spiritual readiness for transcendence, which mostly translates to charging whatever feels cosmically appropriate. By noon, the shop has become the epicenter of a citywide party. Musicians appear from nowhere, or more likely, Dionysus summoned them with his divine networking skills. A conga line of philosophers snakes through the streets, debating the nature of reality while doing synchronized kicks. The city guard arrives to investigate noise complaints and leaves an hour later, singing bawdy songs and carrying complimentary amphorae. Hermes, supposedly handling deliveries, has turned the job into an extreme sport. He's racing through Athens at barely visible speeds, leaving trails of wine scent and confused customers who swear their purchases arrive before they finished ordering. Several people report their wine arriving with notes like, "You'll order this tomorrow," and "Trust me, you want the red." The temporal paradoxes are giving Kronos a headache somewhere. The real crisis comes when the free samples run low. Dionysus, in his infinite divine wisdom, hasn't quite grasped that mortal inventory doesn't replenish itself. "What do you mean we're running out?" he asks Charis, who's developed a eye twitch. "Just make more appear." She patiently explains that's not how mortal commerce works, while behind her, a satyr tries to squeeze grapes directly into customers' cups. "Fine," Dionysus declares, "then we'll make more the mortal way." What follows is the world's first interactive winemaking experience. Though historians still argue whether it was intentional innovation or desperate improvisation, customers find themselves stomping grapes in hastily procured vats, their feet staining purple as they dance to increasingly frantic flute music. A delegation of Egyptian merchants gets especially enthusiastic, introducing dance moves that won't be seen again until disco is invented. The shop's grand opening special of buy one amphora, get a spiritual experience free proves too successful. By late afternoon, the entire agora has transformed into an impromptu festival. Vendors abandon their stalls to join the revelry. The statue of Athena in the nearby temple appears to be wearing a grape crown, though everyone's too diplomatic or drunk to ask how it got there. A group of Spartan visitors, initially dismissive of Athenian decadence, are now teaching everyone a drinking song that involves a lot of synchronized shield banging. You spot the health inspector from yesterday trying to take notes, but his stylus keeps turning into a tiny thyrsus, and his wax tablet has sprouted grape leaves. He eventually gives up and joins a group discussion about whether wine is a solid, liquid, or state of mind. The consensus seems to be yes. As the sun sets over Athens, painting the chaos in shades of gold and wine, you realize the shop has served roughly 10 times its capacity and somehow created wine that didn't exist this morning. The till overflows with coins, IOUs, and at least one deed to a small island. Dionysus stands in the center of it all, glowing with success and fermented grapes, declaring this the dawn of a new era in retail divinity. Tomorrow will bring hangovers, complaints, and probably several new city ordinances. But tonight, Athens remembers why it once worshipped the god of wine. You stumble into the shop the morning after to find Dionysus engaged in what can only be described as economic warfare. The local wine merchants guild has assembled outside, led by Alexios, the same gruff Corinthian whose watered-down vintages had so offended the god just days ago. They're carrying signs with slogans like "Mortals for Mortal Wine" and "Down with Divine Monopolies," though several protesters seem to be fighting hangovers from yesterday's free samples. "This is unfair competition," Alexios shouts, his face red with either anger or last night's overindulgence. How can honest merchants compete with someone who literally makes wine from miracles? Behind him, the other merchants nod vigorously, though you notice several are clutching ceramic cups that definitely contain Dionysian vintages. The hypocrisy is as thick as unfiltered wine. Dionysus lounges in his doorway, looking amused rather than concerned. He's wearing what appears to be a toga made entirely of wine. It maintains its shape through divine will and occasionally drips into a conveniently placed cup. "Unfair," he muses, his voice carrying that dangerous purr that usually precedes someone being turned into a dolphin. "Was it fair when you sold vinegar and called it vintage? When you charged desperate souls premium prices for grape juice that could strip paint?" The confrontation escalates when Alexios produces a scroll. "We've petitioned the assembly. Commerce between mortals should remain mortal." He unrolls the document with a flourish, revealing hundreds of signatures and what looks like an official seal. Charis, ever practical, snatches it for examination. Half these signatures are just X marks, she observes, and this seal, is that made from a wine cork? You watch the crowd grow as word spreads through the agora. Soon it's not just wine merchants, but olive oil sellers worried about Athena opening a grove, bread bakers terrified of Demeter starting a bakery, and one very nervous swordsmith muttering about Hephaestus ruining the weapons market. The economic anxiety is palpable, mixing with the lingering wine fumes from yesterday to create an atmosphere of intoxicated panic. Fellow merchants, Dionysus suddenly announces, spreading his arms wide. The wine toga ripples dramatically. You see me as competition, but I come as liberation. The crowd quiets, curious despite themselves. For too long, you've sold mediocrity because that's all mortals expected. But what if they demanded more? What if every cup of mortal wine had to compete with memories of divine flavor? He gestures to a nearby wine cellar, a young woman named Melissa. You there, what's your best seller? She stammers about a reliable red from Lesbos. Dionysus nods thoughtfully. Bring me a cup. When she does, he doesn't taste it. Instead, he whispers something over it and hands it back. Now try it. Melissa sips cautiously, then her eyes widen. It tastes the same, but somehow I can appreciate every subtle note, the earth it grew in, the rain that fed it, the hands that picked the grapes. That's what I'm truly selling, Dionysus explains to the mesmerized crowd. Not just wine, but the ability to truly taste what you've been missing. Every merchant here could benefit if customers developed actual palates instead of just drinking to forget. It's either brilliant marketing or divine manipulation, possibly both. The standoff takes an unexpected turn when a competitor arrives, not another wine merchant, but a priest of Dionysus from the official temple. He's a stern man named Hierophant Thaddeus, and he's not happy about freelance divinity. Lord Dionysus, he intones, somehow making the title sound like an insult. The temple has exclusive rights to distribute your blessed vintages. This commercial venture undermines centuries of sacred tradition. Oh, does it? Dionysus's grin could ferment grapes at 50 paces. Tell me, Thaddeus, when was the last time the temple's wine made someone genuinely happy? Not religiously ecstatic, not ritually intoxicated, but actually simply happy? The priest splutters about proper ceremonies and traditional dilution ratios. Dionysus waves him off. You've turned my gift into gatekeeping. I'm taking it back to the people. The theological economic debate that follows would later be cited in philosophy classes as the Dionysian market paradox. And can gods participate in mortal commerce? Does divine wine constitute unfair trade practices or religious expression? If a god opens a business, are profits considered offerings? The crowd splits into factions: traditional merchants, progressive entrepreneurs who see opportunity, temple loyalists, and a growing group of customers who just want to buy more of that wine that made them see colors that don't exist. Hermes chooses this moment to arrive with a delivery, though it's clearly just an excuse to watch the drama. You know, he says, hovering slightly above the crowd. Zeus is going to hear about this. Dionysus shrugs, pouring himself another cup from his toga. Let him. He wanted us to get jobs. He didn't specify we had to be bad at them. The morning's conflict reaches its peak when Alexios, in desperation, challenges Dionysus to a competition. If you're truly here to elevate mortal wine culture, he declares, then prove it. A blind tasting, your wines against the best mortal vintages. Let the people judge. The crowd roars approval. Dionysus's eyes light up with competitive fire. You're on. But when I win, you all stop whining about unfair competition and start improving your own products. As plans for the competition begin, you notice something interesting. The protesters have gradually integrated with the shop's customers. Merchants are comparing notes with Maenads about preservation techniques. The priest is in deep discussion with Charis about proper wine storage. The economic anxiety is fermenting into something else: curiosity, innovation, maybe even inspiration. The god of wine hasn't just opened a shop, he's started a revolution in how Athens thinks about its cups. You're watching Silenus attempt to explain the concept of customer service to a group of satyrs when the first disaster strikes. A well-dressed woman enters the shop, nose elevated high enough to catch clouds, and demands to speak with someone civilized. The nearest satyr, Kopros, eagerly bounds forward on his goat legs, his fake human feet, sandals clicking against his hooves with every step. Welcome to Divine Vintages, where every sip is a journey. Kopros bleats enthusiastically, his words slightly slurred from sampling the inventory. He's wearing what appears to be a toga made from several dishcloths sewn together, with staff painted on it in wine stains. The woman recoils as his goat breath wafts over her. I need wine for my daughter's wedding, she says, trying to maintain dignity while stepping back. Something refined, elegant, not. She gestures at Kopros, who's now scratching behind his horn. Whatever this is. And the satyr's interpretation of refined involves bringing out what he calls the Bacchanalian bridal blend, which is less a wine and more a liquid party in an amphora. One sip, and the wedding transforms into an orgy, he promises cheerfully. The woman's scream could shatter pottery. She flees the shop, nearly bowling over two more satyrs who are demonstrating wine aerobics to confused customers. Charis appears like a vengeful fury, grabbing Kopros by the ear, not easy when the ear is pointed and furry. What did I tell you about the O word? She hisses. The satyr looks genuinely confused. But that's what happens. Remember Theseus's wedding and that time with the Corinthian prince, and she cuts him off with a look that could sober Dionysus himself. The morning continues in similar fashion. A satyr named Bunko has interpreted upselling to mean physically lifting customers over his head while shouting about premium options. Another one, Staphylos, has decided that customer small talk means sharing extremely personal stories about his romantic conquests among the dryads. You watch him corner a poor philosopher who came in for a simple house red and is now learning more about tree nymph anatomy than any mortal should know. The thing about oak dryads, Staphylos explains, his tail swishing enthusiastically and knocking over a display. Is their bark is worse than their bite, if you know what I mean. The philosopher doesn't know what he means, and clearly doesn't want to. He's edging toward the door, but Staphylos follows, oblivious. Now pine dryads. They're sticky situations. Get it? Sticky, like sap? Dionysus, meanwhile, has decided to implement what he calls performance reviews. This involves gathering the satyr staff in a circle and having them demonstrate their sales techniques on each other. The result looks less like retail training and more like an interpretive dance about commerce. One satyr's idea of greeting customers involves a complex routine with symbols. Another believes processing payment requires a blessing from Pan, complete with a small sacrificial cheese. The situation reaches peak chaos when a delegation of Spartan merchants arrives, sent to investigate these rumors of revolutionary wine. Spartans, as you know, appreciate discipline, order, and absolutely no nonsense. They're greeted by Triptos, a satyr who's taken Dionysus's instruction to make customers feel welcome as a directive to hug everyone who enters. The lead Spartan, a man who looks like he bench presses pillars, finds himself wrapped in furry arms while Triptos bleats, "Welcome, warrior friend, let wine dissolve your rigid ways." You've never seen Spartans retreat, but there's a first time for everything. They back away slowly as Triptos advances, now joined by 3 other satyrs who formed an impromptu welcome committee. "Come, dance, forget your military drills," Satunan youts, producing a flute from somewhere uncomfortable. The Spartan's strategic withdrawal turns into a full rout when Bunko emerges from the back, carrying an amphora over his head while completely naked except for strategically placed grape leaves. "This is a disaster," Charis mutters, watching the Spartans flee. She's developed a permanent eye twitch and has started keeping a flask of Patience of Penelope, a special blend Dionysus created just for her. We're going to be known as the shop where civilization goes to die. A crash from the storage room emphasizes her point, followed by giggling and the sound of many hooves. The afternoon brings what historians would later call the incident of the Athenian Ladies' Wine Appreciation Society. 20 of Athens's most proper matrons arrive for what they assume will be a cultured tasting experience. Instead, they're greeted by the full satyr staff, who've decided to put on a synchronized dance routine to demonstrate the bouquet of movement in every vintage. The lead matron, a woman who could freeze olive oil with her glare, watches in horror as satyrs leap and prance, their various appendages creating a spectacle that would make Aristophanes blush. "Perhaps," she says icily, "we've come to the wrong establishment." But before they can leave, Kopros bounds forward with samples of maiden's blush, which he describes with disturbing anatomical accuracy. The society's youngest member actually does blush, while the eldest asks pointed questions about exactly which maiden they're discussing. The tasting devolves into chaos when the satyrs interpret the lady's nervous laughter as encouragement and break into what they call traditional wine songs, but sound more like mating calls. By closing time, you're exhausted from damage control. The shop has somehow made record sales despite, or perhaps because of, The satyr's unique approach to retail. Dionysus seems thrilled, declaring it authentic divine commerce, while Charis looks ready to open her own competing shop, staffed entirely by mute humans. The satyrs celebrate their successful day by opening several amphoras and starting an impromptu party that will definitely violate noise ordinances. As you help herd the last confused customer out, a young man who came for wedding wine and is leaving with an existential crisis and a phone number written on a grape leaf, you realize tomorrow will bring fresh disasters. The satyrs are already planning something they call Theatrical Thursday, which apparently involves costume changes and interpretive dance. The god of wine has created not just a shop, but a daily performance art piece about the dangers of mixing mythology with customer service. You find Apollo standing outside Divine Vintages at dawn, glowing like a portable sunrise and holding what appears to be a marketing portfolio made of pure light. His golden hair flows in a breeze that affects only him, and he's wearing a toga that somehow includes lens flares. Brother, he announces to Dionysus, who's nursing what gods call hangovers, but mortals would call extreme existential displacement. I heard about your commercial venture, and I've come to help. Dionysus squints at him through bloodshot eyes that are cycling through purple hues like a bruise in reverse. It's too early for whatever this is, he groans. Apollo's glow intensifies in response, making several passing merchants shield their eyes and one unfortunate rooster crow 3 hours late. Nonsense. The early god catches the mortal market share. I've prepared a comprehensive marketing strategy. What follows is a presentation that would make modern PowerPoints weep with inadequacy. Apollo manifests floating charts made of sunbeams, each one more incomprehensible than the last. First, he declares, we need to talk about your brand identity. Wine is so nocturnal. We need to brighten it up. He waves his hand, and the shop's purple banners bleach to a eye-searing gold. Dionysus's scream of protest harmonizes accidentally with Apollo's lyre, creating a chord that makes everyone in a 3-block radius suddenly crave both wine and poetry. Your target demographic is too narrow, Apollo continues, oblivious to his brother's growing horror. Drunks, partygoers, philosophers, where's the morning crowd, the exercise enthusiasts, the health conscious? He produces a new product, seemingly from thin air, a bottle that radiates wholesome energy. I call it Dawn's Sobriety, wine that actually makes you more clear-headed. Charis takes one look at the bottle and develops a new eye twitch. That's just expensive grape juice, she says. Apollo beams at her. Exactly, but marketed with divine authority. We'll call it mindful drinking and charge triple. He's already redesigning the shop interior with his powers, adding mirrors that reflect customers' best angles and installing what he calls therapeutic light frequencies that actually just make everyone squint. The real catastrophe begins when Apollo decides to demonstrate proper customer engagement. A nervous scribe enters looking for writing wine, the kind that allegedly improves poetry. Apollo practically tackles him with enthusiasm. Welcome, mortal, to your enlightenment journey. The god's radiance increases with each word until the poor scribe is basically being interrogated by a small sun. Tell me, what are your creative goals, your artistic dreams, your metabolic preferences? The scribe stammers something about just wanting to finish an epic poem about sheep. Apollo's eyes literally light up, small flames dance in his pupils. Sheep, how wonderfully pastoral. You need our bucolic brilliance blend, infused with the essence of three different sunrise metaphors and a hint of my own musical inspiration. He starts playing his lyre, and the wine in nearby cups begins to resonate, creating tiny tsunamis of fermented harmony. Perhaps, Dionysus interrupts, his patience finally fermenting into action. We should discuss this marketing approach. But Apollo's on a roll now, manifesting what he calls ambient advertising. Suddenly, every shadow in the shop spells out wine names. The morning light through the windows forms customer testimonials in floating letters. A rainbow appears indoors, each color band promoting a different vintage. It's technically impressive and commercially insane. The situation escalates when Apollo decides to compose a jingle, not just any jingle, a divine earworm that literally cannot be forgotten. He strums his lyre and sings, divine vintages, where gods and mortals meet, every sip's a myth, every taste so sweet. And the melody immediately lodges in everyone's brain. You can see customers walking away humming it, their eyes glazed with a mixture of musical possession and retail confusion. Music is powerful, Apollo explains, still strumming. But we need visual impact too. He transforms the shop's exterior into what can only be described as an assault on retinas. The walls pulse with golden light that spells out, "Drink responsibly," in letters that cause immediate headaches. The entrance now features a holographic Apollo giving thumbs up to everyone who passes. Several customers walk into walls, blinded by divine marketing. Hermes arrives for his delivery shift and immediately bursts into laughter. "Oh, this is perfect," he gasps between guffaws. "It's like someone weaponized commerce." He's not wrong. Apollo's improvements have turned the shop into a sensory overload that would make Las Vegas jealous. The satyrs, already challenged by regular customer service, are now trying to work while musical notes physically manifest around their heads. The breaking point comes when Apollo unveils his masterpiece, a loyalty program where customers' purchases are tracked by small, personalized sun sprites. Every 10th purchase, they get a free prophetic dream about their wine preferences, he announces proudly. The first customer to trigger this reward immediately collapses, overwhelmed by visions of every grape they'll ever taste. Charis and Dionysus have to carry him to a bench while he mumbles about the Riesling of 367 BCE and the Merlot that doesn't exist yet. "Brother," Dionysus says carefully, the way one talks to armed madmen or marketing executives, "I appreciate your enthusiasm, but wine is about earthly pleasures, mortal joy, the beautiful chaos of intoxication, not..." He gestures at the shop, which now looks like a temple designed by someone who just discovered neon. "Whatever this is." Apollo's face falls, his glow dimming to merely blinding. You don't like the singing wine bottles? Indeed, he's enchanted the merchandise to hum their own tasting notes. A nearby amphora is warbling about its hints of blackberry and existential satisfaction. Another is performing what sounds like a dissertation on its own terroir. The cacophony is indescribable. As the day wears on, customers either flee immediately or leave with severe sensory trauma and surprising sales receipts. The subliminal marketing is unfortunately effective. One philosopher purchases 12 cases while weeping about how the light tastes like truth. A warrior buys out the entire stock of red wine because the rainbow told him to. It's successful in the way natural disasters are successful at clearing land. By sunset, which Apollo makes unusually spectacular out of spite, Dionysus has managed to undo most of the improvements. The shop returns to its comfortable, wine-stained chaos. Apollo leaves in a huff, muttering about pearls before swine and marketing to the masses. His parting gift is a curse that makes the cash register sing every transaction in heroic verse, which Charis discovers she can muffle with strategic placement of bar towels. The god of wine and the god of music may be brothers, but their business philosophies are as compatible as wine and milk, technically possible, definitely inadvisable, and guaranteed to leave everyone involved slightly nauseous. You smell him before you see him, a mixture of bureaucratic mustiness and fermented anxiety that announces the arrival of Heraclitus, Athens' most feared health inspector. He stands in the doorway of divine vintages, clutching a wax tablet that's already sweating in the morning heat, his official badge prominently displayed like a shield against divine intervention. Behind him lurks his assistant, a nervous youth who keeps glancing at the sky as if expecting Zeus to strike them down for audacity. "I am here," Heraclitus announces with the gravity of someone delivering a death sentence, "to conduct a thorough inspection of this establishment." He says establishment, the way others might say cesspool. Dionysus, who's been fermenting a new batch by singing to it, looks up with interest. "Ah, the mortal who measures cleanliness. Come, let me show you wonders beyond your regulations." The inspection begins at the entrance, where Heraclitus immediately starts scribbling notes. "Inadequate ventilation," he mutters, ignoring the fact that the wine-scented breeze flowing through the shop is literally divine breath. "No visible hand-washing station." Charis points to a fountain that appeared overnight, flowing with what Dionysus insists is purifying wine. The inspector is not amused. "Wine is not an approved sanitizing agent," he says, making another mark. Things deteriorate rapidly when they reach the storage area. The amphorae are stacked in patterns that spell out drinking songs, held in place by nothing but divine will and dubious physics. "This is a collapse hazard," Heraclitus declares. As if to prove his point, a satyr bursts through, chasing a wheel of cheese that's achieved sentience, a side effect of being stored too close to the ambrosia-infused vintages. The inspector's stylus moves so fast, it's smoking. "And what?" Heraclitus asks in a tone that suggests he already regrets asking. "Is that?" He's pointing at what Dionysus calls the fermentation corner, where wine is being aged in vessels that include a giant seashell, a helmet that once belonged to Achilles, and something that might be a crystallized cloud. The god beams proudly. Innovation. Each vessel imparts unique characteristics. The helmet adds notes of heroism and slight PTSD. The inspector's eye twitches. He's developing the same condition as Charis, you notice. Food safety regulations clearly state, but he's interrupted by the arrival of the day's special batch, carried in by satyrs who are using their horns as wine holders. Absolutely not, Heraclitus shouts, his composure cracking like a dropped amphora. Animals in food preparation areas. We're not animals, Copros protests, his goat tail swishing indignantly. We're mythological beings, totally different health code. This launches a philosophical debate about whether divine creatures fall under standard regulations. The assistant frantically flips through scrolls of city ordinances, finding nothing about proper storage temperature for nectar or required hoof washing stations for satyrs. The inspection tour continues into the customer area, where things are marginally better until Heraclitus notices the wine fountain. It's a beautiful piece. Hephaestus knocked it together as a favor, featuring Dionysus riding a dolphin while wine flows from various anatomically questionable spouts. Public drinking fountain requires permit 77B, the inspector notes. Also, the dolphin is winking. That's just disturbing. You watch Dionysus's patience ferment from amusement to annoyance. His eyes swirl deeper purple, and the wine in nearby cups starts bubbling ominously. Mortal, he says, his voice carrying harmonics that make everyone slightly drunk. Do you know what happened to the last person who tried to regulate my revels? Heraclitus, to his credit, stands firm. I don't care if you turn them into a dolphin. Code is code. The real entertainment begins when Heraclitus demands to see the employee washing facilities. Charis leads him to what the satyrs use, a natural spring that Dionysus blessed, which now flows with wine-scented water that makes anyone who uses it spontaneously speak in rhyming couplets. The inspector tests it himself and immediately declares, this aqueous solution lacks proper resolution. His horror at speaking in verse is matched only by his assistant's poorly suppressed giggles. Let's discuss pest control. Heraclitus manages, fighting the rhyming curse. Dionysus laughs. Pests? In my shop? Show me one mouse, one fly, one... He's interrupted by a loud crash. Everyone turns to see a satyr wrestling with what appears to be a leopard. That doesn't count, Dionysus protests. That's Spots. He's staff. The leopard, wearing a collar that says security, has apparently caught someone trying to steal wine. The thief is dangling from its jaws, begging for someone to check if his medical insurance covers divine animal attacks. The inspection reaches its climax in the winemaking area, where Heraclitus discovers the grapes being crushed by dancing maenads. You can't. Feet are not approved crushing implements, he splutters. The maenads, deep in their ritualistic dance, don't even notice him. Their movements are hypnotic, and you realize the inspector has been watching for a full minute without writing anything down. His assistant has to nudge him back to reality. I'm shutting you down, Heraclitus finally announces, his tablet now completely full of violations. Divine establishment or not, this is a public health nightmare. But as he makes this declaration, something strange happens. The wine throughout the shop begins to sing, a low, harmonious hum that speaks of ancient vines and timeless joy. The inspector's official stylus transforms into a tiny thyrsus. His assistant's tablet sprouts grape leaves. You could shut me down, Dionysus says, suddenly serious. But then where would mortals go to remember that life is more than rules and regulations? Where would they find the wine that makes them dance, love, create? He pours a cup of something that glows like liquid sunset. Even inspectors need to forget their burdens sometimes. Heraclitus stares at the cup like it's a coiled snake. The shop holds its breath. Even the leopard stops chewing on the thief. Then, with the air of a man choosing his doom, the inspector drinks. His expression transforms from official severity to wonder to something approaching divine understanding. I need to reconsider my findings, he says slowly. Perhaps some violations are more interpretative than others. By the time Heraclitus leaves, his report has transformed into a poem praising the innovative approaches to beverage service and recommending only minor improvements like more conventional leopard storage. His assistant follows, humming the wine's song and clutching a complimentary bottle of bureaucrat's reprieve. The shop returns to its normal chaos, though Charis makes a note to at least pretend to have proper hand-washing stations for next time. After all, even gods should make some concessions to mortal sensibilities, if only to keep the inspectors from rhyming. You arrive to find the shop in chaos, more chaos than usual, which is saying something. Wine barrels are multiplying before your eyes, spawning smaller casks that roll around like confused puppies. Dionysus stands in the center of the storage room, arms spread wide, purple energy crackling between his fingers as he attempts what he calls inventory management, but looks more like barely controlled divine fission. It's simple mathematics, he insists, as another barrel splits into triplets. If we have one amphora of good wine, and I bless it with abundance, we should have infinite wine. Charis ducks as a newly formed cask whizzes past her head. That's not how mathematics works, she shouts back. That's not how anything works. But the god is beyond listening, deep in the throes of divine economics. The situation started innocently enough. Morning inventory revealed they were running low on the popular Philosopher's Folly blend. Rather than order more through conventional channels, which would involve talking to mortal suppliers and waiting for delivery, Dionysus decided to apply divine multiplication. The first attempt worked beautifully, turning 1 amphora into 3. The second attempt produced 9. By the third blessing, the exponential growth had achieved sentience. You watch in fascination as tiny wine barrels, no bigger than pomegranates, scurry between the shelves like alcoholic mice. They're leaving trails of wine wherever they roll, creating an increasingly treacherous floor. A medium-sized cask has somehow climbed onto a shelf and is defending its territory from other barrels by spitting cork fragments. In the corner, Two large amphorae are engaged in what can only be described as a mating ritual, rolling around each other in dizzy circles. Maybe, suggests Alexis, the mathematical genius they hired. We should stop before. He's cut off by an explosion of wine from the back room. A barrel has reached critical mass and discharged its contents in a purple geyser that paints the ceiling. The wine doesn't drip down. Instead, it forms tiny grape clusters that begin growing in real time. Within seconds, the shop has an indoor vineyard spreading across the rafters. The satyrs, naturally, see this as an improvement. Kopros is already climbing the walls to harvest ceiling grapes, while Staphylos has befriended a family of tiny barrels and is teaching them drinking songs. The smallest casks harmonize in surprisingly pleasant voices, though their lyrics consist entirely of variating on glug glug and pour me. We need to sell these before they multiply further, Charis declares, ever practical. She's developed a system of herding the smaller barrels with a broom, though they seem to enjoy the game and keep circling back for more sweeping. Dionysus, can you at least stop them from reproducing? The god considers this, then shakes his head. I don't think they're reproducing. I think they're undergoing wine mitosis. Indeed, as you watch, a barrel swells and divides like a cell, creating two identical offspring that immediately begin aging at visible speed. One develops a vintage patina within minutes, while its twin seems to be fermenting backwards into grape juice. The temporal paradoxes are giving everyone headaches, especially when a customer walks in and is immediately pelted by enthusiastic baby barrels trying to sell themselves. Is this, the customer asks, dodging a particularly aggressive cask, normal? Hermes, who's arrived for his shift, nods cheerfully. Completely standard. Would you like the self-pouring variety or the ones that age themselves to match your mood? The customer, apparently deciding this is too much reality before noon, flees without purchasing anything. The rejected barrels huddle together, making sad sloshing sounds. The crisis deepens when the multiplying wine begins to develop personalities. A cluster of red wine barrels has formed what appears to be a militant union, demanding better storage conditions and threatening to sour if their demands aren't met. The white wines have established a sophisticated social hierarchy based on clarity and acidity levels. A group of rosé casks has started what can only be described as an influencer culture, posing for anyone who looks at them and making kissy sounds. This is unsustainable, Alexis observes, his talent for understatement intact, despite the chaos. He's trying to calculate the rate of multiplication on a tablet, but the numbers keep changing because the wine is now reproducing in non-Euclidean patterns. At this rate, we'll have more wine than atoms in the universe by sunset. Dionysus waves off this concern. The universe could use more wine. The situation reaches critical mass when the city guard arrives, summoned by neighbors complaining about aggressive barrels and tactical wine deployment. The captain takes one look at the scene, satyrs surfing on medium-sized casks, Charis jousting with animated amphorae using a mop, wine reproducing itself in dimensions that shouldn't exist, and promptly turns around. Nope, he announces. This is above my pay grade. Someone call a philosopher, or a priest, or both. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Charis grabs Dionysus by his wine-stained robes. Fix this now. The god sighs dramatically, as if being asked to clean his room. Fine, but I want it on record that this would have revolutionized wine distribution. He raises his hands, and purple light floods the shop. The multiplying stops instantly. The baby barrels freeze mid-roll. The ceiling vineyard pauses its growth. Now what? Asks Kopros, still hanging from the rafters. Dionysus grins. Now we have the world's first self-selecting wine sale. Each customer gets to catch their own barrel. Whatever they capture, they keep for a flat rate. It's insane. But then again, so is everything else about this shop. Within minutes, word spreads through Athens. Divine Vintages is hosting a barrel rodeo. The rest of the day becomes the stuff of legend. Philosophers debate the ethics of hunting wine. Athletes treat it as training. One elderly woman proves surprisingly adept at barrel wrangling, leaving with 6 casks and a satisfied smile. The satyrs turn it into a sport, offering coaching services for a fee. Even the pompous wine merchants from yesterday show up, though they claim it's just to observe this madness. By closing time, most of the excess inventory has been caught and sold. The remaining barrels have formed a small community in the back room, which Dionysus declares a nature preserve. Every shop needs personality, he insists. Charis doesn't argue. She's too exhausted and slightly drunk from the ambient wine fumes. The ceiling vineyard remains, dropping occasional grapes into customers' cups. It's not regulation, but at this point, what is? As you help sweep up cork fragments and wine puddles that giggle when mopped, you realize this shop has transcended normal commerce. It's become a daily adventure in divine economics, where inventory management requires equal parts accounting and animal husbandry. Tomorrow, Dionysus plans to introduce a customer loyalty program involving minor prophecies. You make a mental note to arrive early, or maybe very, very late. You're helping Charis sort through the morning's complaint scrolls when you realize they're not just numerous, they're achieving epic poetry length. Listen to this one, she says, unrolling a papyrus that reaches the floor. Dear divine vintages, your wisdom of the vine made me quit my job as a scribe to become an interpretive dancer. While I've never been happier, I can't pay my rent with pirouettes. Please advise. The complaints range from reasonable to ridiculous to transcendently bizarre. A merchant writes that after drinking Merchant's Memory, he remembered every bad deal he'd ever made and spent 3 days weeping into his accounting scrolls. A philosopher claims philosopher's folly made him realize his entire thesis was wrong, and now he owes the Academy a refund. One particularly lengthy complaint comes from a woman who insists the wine made her fall in love with a statue of Hermes, and could they please make an antidote? We need a customer service policy, Charis announces, brandishing the scrolls like weapons. Dionysus, who's been taste testing the morning batch with perhaps too much enthusiasm, waves dismissively. Wine doesn't come with warranties, it comes with experiences. But even he can't ignore the growing crowd outside, a mixture of angry customers, curious onlookers, and at least one person who appears to be married to a dolphin. The dolphin situation requires an immediate attention. A fisherman named Nicias stands at the door, holding hands, fins, with a bottlenose dolphin in a makeshift wheeled tub. Your Poseidon's laughter blend, he says accusingly. You didn't mention the side effects. The dolphin clicks and whistles, which Nicias translates as, she says she loves me too, but her family doesn't approve. Dionysus studies the couple with interest. That's not a side effect. That's true love transcending species. Next. But the complaints keep coming. A delegation of wives arrives, furious that their husbands came home speaking only in dactylic hexameter after drinking Homer's Helper. They demand either a cure or complimentary wine so they can understand the dinner conversation. A young athlete shows up with what he claims are wine muscles. His biceps have indeed turned slightly purple and smell of fermented grapes. He's not exactly complaining, but he's concerned about upcoming competitions. One at a time, Charis shouts, trying to establish order. She's set up a makeshift customer service desk using overturned amphorae and a blanket. Kopros has been assigned to take notes, though his spelling is creative at best. Fishman marred to dolphin, he writes carefully, wants divorce or bigger tub. The morning's most dramatic complaint comes from Theognis, a prominent magistrate who storms in wearing what appears to be a crown of grapevines growing directly from his scalp. Your Bacchus's blessing has turned me into a living vineyard. Indeed, small grape clusters dangle from his new foliage, and his angry gestures cause wine droplets to fly. I have a court session in an hour. How am I supposed to maintain judicial dignity like this? Dionysus examines him with the air of an artist admiring his work. The vines really bring out your eyes. Have you considered keeping them? Very fashionable in Thrace. Theognis's response involves several legal terms and creative profanity. Eventually, Hermes is dispatched to find a divine hairdresser who might know how to style vine hair into something resembling respectability. The transformation complaints are just the beginning. A group of customers report that Muse's kiss has given them uncontrollable urges to create art, resulting in Athens being flooded with mediocre poetry, off-key songs, and interpretive dances performed at inappropriate times. The city's productivity has plummeted as accountants abandon their tablets for tambourines and soldiers compose sonnets instead of drilling. Maybe, suggests Alexis, who's been calculating complaint statistics, we should include warning labels. Dionysus looks offended. Warning labels? What's next? Diluting the wine with water like some common tavern. But Charis is already designing signs. May cause temporary divinity. Not responsible for matrimonial decisions made under influence. Side effects may include speaking in verse, unusual animal attractions, and the ability to see sound. The situation escalates when a customer service expert arrives, though expert is generous. He's a priest of Hermes who claims to specialize in divine mortal commercial relations. His solution involves a complex ritual where dissatisfied customers must perform interpretive dance to express their complaints, while Dionysus judges their artistic merit. If he's sufficiently entertained, they get a refund. If not, they get more wine. You watch the first complaint dance with morbid fascination. The fisherman and his dolphin bride perform a touching pas de deux about aquatic love and economic hardship. Dionysus awards them a partial refund and a waterproof marriage certificate he manifests on the spot. The magistrate with vine hair refuses to dance, citing dignity, until the wine in his scalp grapes ferments further, and he breaks into an impressive solo about judicial independence. By afternoon, the shop has transformed into a complaint theater. The line of dissatisfied customers has become an audience, cheering for particularly creative grievances. A woman whose Amazon's ambition gave her the strength to bench press her husband performs a powerful routine about domestic power dynamics. The athlete with wine muscles creates a bodybuilding pose routine that makes several audience members swoon. This is actually working, Charis whispers, surprised. Indeed, the combination of public performance and peer pressure has transformed angry customers into competitive artists. Some people seem to be inventing complaints just for the chance to perform. A shy philosopher claims the wine made him too confident, then delivers a devastating dance critique of Platonic idealism that has the audience in tears. The day's climax comes when all the transformation victims band together for a group performance. The vine-haired magistrate conducts while the purple-muscled athlete lifts the dolphin-married fisherman, whose aquatic bride provides backing vocals. The wives speaking in hexameter create a Greek chorus effect, while various partially transformed customers add their own flourishes. It's chaotic, beautiful, and definitely not what anyone expected from customer service. Dionysus is so moved, he offers everyone complimentary harmony blend to balance their transformations. But, he adds with a divine grin, only if you promise to keep some of the changes. Athens could use more interesting citizens. Most accept, though the magistrate negotiates to keep the vines only on weekends. As the crowd disperses, many clutching bottles of reconciliation wine, you realize Divine Vintages has inadvertently created something new: customer service as performance art. Charis adds a sign to the door: complaints accepted via interpretive dance, Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's unconventional, but then again, conventional went out the window the moment a god decided to open a shop. Tomorrow someone will probably complain about the complaint process, leading to an infinite loop of artistic expression, but that's tomorrow's dance to choreograph. You sense trouble the moment Athena materializes in the shop, her owl perched on her shoulder and her eyes gleaming with the kind of wisdom that usually means someone's about to get a lecture. She's wearing her business chiton, the one with tiny owls embroidered in a pattern that somehow forms economic graphs when you stare at it too long. Brother, she says to Dionysus, who immediately tries to hide behind a large amphora, we need to talk about your business model. I have a business model, Dionysus asks, genuinely surprised. I thought I just sold wine and collected coins. Athena's eye twitches, a divine tell that she's about to deliver a PowerPoint presentation without the PowerPoint. She manifests a scroll that unrolls itself, revealing charts, graphs, and what appears to be a SWOT analysis written in ancient Greek. Your overhead is astronomical, she begins, pacing the shop like a general surveying a battlefield. You're giving away transformative experiences for the price of regular wine. Your staff consists of mythological beings who don't understand mortal currency. And don't get me started on your inventory management. Wine that reproduces itself violates basic economic principles. Cheris, who's been struggling with the books all week, nods vigorously. Thank you. Someone finally said it. She shows Athena the ledgers, which have entries like paid, 3 goats and a prophecy, and received, customer's firstborn, returned after legal consultation. The wisdom goddess's owl hoots in what sounds like disapproval. I've come to help, Athena announces, rolling up her sleeves in a way that makes everyone nervous. First, we're implementing proper pricing strategies. Wine that causes temporary transformations should cost at least 50 drachmas, not 5. Dionysus gasps. 50? That's robbery. Athena fixes him with a stare that's turned warriors to stone. It's market value for miraculous experiences. You're literally selling divinity by the cup. What follows is a hostile takeover disguised as helpful consultation. Athena summons a team of her owl accountants. Yes, apparently she has those, who swoop through the shop conducting aggressive audits. They perch on shelves, hooting calculations at each other in a mathematical language that makes Alexis weep with joy and everyone else develop migraines. Your satyr staff needs performance metrics, Athena declares, manifesting employee evaluation forms. The satyrs, who've been napping in the storeroom, wake to find themselves subjected to skill assessments. Copros fails basic customer interaction, but scores surprisingly high on innovative problem solving, mainly because he solved a difficult customer complaint by getting them too drunk to remember it. The real conflict begins when Athena tries to reorganize the wine selection. These names are ridiculous, she says, reading labels. Philosopher's Folly, Bacchus's Blessing, where's the clear value proposition? She starts relabeling everything with practical names. Mild Euphoria Plus, Social Confidence Enhancer, Productivity Reduction Formula. Dionysus watches in horror as poetry becomes product descriptions. You're sucking the soul out of it, he protests. But Athena's already moved on to implementing a customer tracking system using tiny mechanical owls that follow patrons around and record their purchasing habits. One customer tries to shoo away his owl and gets a lecture on data-driven marketing delivered in aggressive hoots. The situation escalates when Athena decides to optimize the customer experience. She installs a number system where patrons must take a ticket and wait to be called. The spontaneous nature of divine wine shopping dies instantly, replaced by organized queues and automated announcements delivered by a particularly pompous owl. Now serving, mortal number 73 at Fermentation Station 2. This is a disaster, mutters Hermes, who's returned from a delivery to find his casual workplace transformed into a temple of efficiency. Where's the chaos? The unpredictability? The chance of accidentally marrying a dolphin? Athena overhears and immediately creates a waiver form for unexpected matrimonial consequences that customers must sign in triplicate. The breaking point comes when she tries to standardize the wine itself. Consistency is key, she lectures, pouring identical samples from different batches. Customers should know exactly what they're getting every time. Dionysus tastes the standardized wine and spits it out immediately. You've turned ambrosia into accounting. This wine has no soul, no surprise, no. He pauses, his eyes widening. No divinity. Indeed, Athena's optimization has somehow filtered out the divine essence. The wine is perfectly consistent, reasonably priced, and completely mortal. Customers who drink it experience nothing more than mild intoxication and a strange urge to file their taxes early. The shop's magical atmosphere fades, replaced by the sterile efficiency of a well-run business. Look at your profits, though, Athena says proudly, showing charts where the lines all go up and to the right. But the shop feels wrong. The satyrs move mechanically, following their performance scripts. The wine barrels no longer sing. Even the ceiling vineyard has withered into orderly rows that produce grapes on a predictable schedule. Dionysus slumps on his throne, looking defeated. Is this what Zeus wanted? For us to become accountants? The word tastes bitter in his mouth. Athena's about to respond when something unexpected happens. The customers revolt, not violently, but creatively. They begin dancing between the cue ropes, turning the number taking into a game. Someone starts harmonizing with the mechanical owls. A philosopher begins debating with his tracking owl about the nature of privacy. They're ruining the system, Athena exclaims, but Charis laughs. No, they're making it human again. And she's right. The mortals, faced with divine efficiency, are injecting their own chaos. The perfectly measured wine portions get mixed into wild cocktails. The standardized labels get decorated with customer doodles. Someone teaches the accounting owls drinking songs. Dionysus watches this mortal rebellion with growing delight. You see, sister, you can't optimize joy. You can't standardize transcendence. He stands, purple energy crackling. Thank you for the lesson in what not to do. With a wave of his hand, most of Athena's improvements dissolve, though he keeps the basic bookkeeping system because Charis threatens him with a broom. Athena huffs, gathering her owls. Fine, run your chaotic establishment. But don't come crying to me when she's cut off by a customer offering her a cup of wisdom's folly, a new blend created during the rebellion. She takes a sip automatically, and her eyes widen. For just a moment, the goddess of wisdom looks wonderfully, divinely confused. I should go, she says, a small smile playing at her lips. Perhaps there's wisdom in foolishness after all. She vanishes in a shower of olive leaves and financial documents, leaving behind only one small owl who's decided to stay and learn drinking songs. The shop returns to its comfortable chaos, though with slightly better accounting. Dionysus declares the day of victory and opens a special vintage to celebrate. The wine tastes like rebellion and joy and the laughter of accountants learning to dance. As you help restore the creative disorder, you realize that some things, wine, wisdom, and the perfect amount of chaos, simply can't be optimized. They can only be experienced, one beautifully unpredictable cup at a time. You hear them before you see them, the synchronized march of Athens's city guard, their bronze armor clanking in rhythm like the world's most aggressive percussion section. They round the corner into the agora, led by Captain Nicomedes, a man whose mustache alone has arrested more criminals than most guards manage in a lifetime. Behind them, a considerably less organized but infinitely more enthusiastic group follows. Dionysus's maenads, dancing and twirling, leaving trails of flower petals and wine droplets. By order of the assembly, Captain Nicomedes bellows, trying to maintain authority while a Maenad places a flower crown on his helmet. This establishment is charged with disrupting public order, corrupting youth, and, he squints at his scroll, transforming the Archon's nephew into someone who only speaks in wine puns. Indeed, a young man nearby shouts, "This situation has me greatly concerned." And Dionysus emerges from his shop, glowing with divine indignation and moderate intoxication. Disrupting order, I'm creating a new order, one where joy isn't illegal. Behind him, the satyrs form what they probably think is an intimidating defensive line, but looks more like a furry dance troupe. Kopros is holding a ladle like a weapon, though he's forgotten which end is threatening. "Sir," Captain Nicomedes says, his patience wearing thinner than watered wine, "we've had 47 noise complaints, 12 reports of spontaneous dancing in the streets, and one incident where the entire pottery district abandoned work to form a conga line." As if to emphasize his point, a conga line passes by in the background, led by a potter still covered in clay. The standoff intensifies as both sides prepare for conflict. The guards draw their swords with practiced precision. The Maenads respond by pulling out their thirsty, ritual staffs topped with pine cones that, in the hands of Dionysian devotees, are somehow more dangerous than any blade. You notice several guards eyeing the thirsty nervously, probably remembering stories about what happened to King Pentheus. "Perhaps we can discuss this civilized beings," Charis attempts, but she's drowned out by Staphylos the satyr shouting, "You'll never take our wine, freedom, fermentation, other words that start with F." This battle cry, such as it is, galvanizes both sides. A guard steps forward. A Maenad matches him. The tension could be cut with a corkscrew. Then the dance-off begins. Nobody's quite sure who starts it. Historians still argue whether it was intentional or just muscle memory triggered by stress. But suddenly, the guard's defensive stance becomes a rhythmic sway. The Maenad's threatening posture transforms into an elaborate spin. Within seconds, the confrontation has become Athens' first documented dance battle. Captain Nicomedes watches in horror as his disciplined guards begin incorporating shield work into their choreography. "What are you doing?" he shouts at a lieutenant who's using his spear as a limbo bar. "We're here to arrest them, not entertain them." But the rhythm is infectious, spread by whatever divine influence Dionysus is radiating like a purple fog. The satyrs, recognizing their element, launch into increasingly acrobatic displays. Kopros performs a backflip that defies both gravity and anatomy. Two guards respond with a synchronized shield routine, that would make Spartans weep with envy. The Maenads circle the entire display, their movements creating patterns that spell out wine is a human right in ancient Greek. You spot Hermes on a nearby rooftop, taking bets on the outcome. 5 drachma on the guards, someone shouts. You're on, another responds. The Maenads have divine backing, and Apollo appears next to him, strumming his lyre to provide a soundtrack that somehow makes everyone's dancing 30% more dramatic. The dance battle escalates through various styles. The guards perform what can only be described as military ballet, their formations precise and intimidating. The Maenads respond with interpretive dance that tells the story of wine's creation, complete with abstract grape-crushing movements. The satyrs contribute something between breakdancing and a fertility ritual that makes several onlookers blush and throw coins. Dionysus himself finally enters the fray, his dancing so divinely perfect it makes everyone else look like they're having coordinated seizures. He moves through styles that won't be invented for centuries, moonwalking across spilled wine, spinning on his divine head, and at one point appearing to dance with multiple versions of himself from different temporal dimensions. Captain Nicomedes, his mustache now wilting from exertion, makes one last attempt at authority. This is ridiculous. We're the city guard, not street performers. But even as he protests, his feet are tapping. One of his sergeants is already incorporating arrest techniques into what looks like a tango. The captain's resolve finally breaks when a particularly enthusiastic Maenad grabs him for a partner dance. The climax comes when both sides, exhausted but exhilarated, perform a massive group number, guards and Maenads, satyrs and soldiers, all moving in chaotic harmony to Apollo's increasingly experimental lyre work. Spectators join in, and soon the entire agora is one massive dance floor. Someone's grandmother shows moves that suggest a wilder youth. A philosopher demonstrates that deep thought doesn't preclude sick beats. As the music finally fades and dancers collapse in exhausted heaps, Captain Nicomedes pants. I came here to arrest you. And Dionysus, barely winded because gods don't really need cardio, grins. And did you? The captain looks around at his guards, who are sharing wine with Maenads, comparing dance techniques with satyrs, and generally fraternizing with the enemy. I suppose, the captain says slowly, accepting a cup of something purple from Charis, we could call this a warning, a dancing warning. He takes a sip, and his eyes widen. Is this law and order blend? Dionysus nods. It helps you see that rules and revelry can coexist. Sometimes the best way to maintain order is to dance with chaos. The guards eventually leave, but not before establishing a weekly cultural exchange program where they'll return for dance lessons in exchange for helping with crowd control during peak hours. Several guards have already signed up for the shop's wine club. One exchanges numbers with a Maenad, writing it down as for official business only, while blushing furiously. As the agora returns to normal, or what passes for normal when there's a divine wine shop in residence, you help clean up the flower petals and spilled wine. The dance battle has become instant legend, with witnesses already exaggerating their own participation. By tomorrow, everyone in Athens will claim they were there when the city guard got served by servants of Dionysus. You know, Charis muses, sweeping up with a broom that somehow picked up rhythm. This can't possibly work every time the authorities show up. Dionysus shrugs, still glowing with post-performance satisfaction. Maybe not, but wasn't it worth it to see Captain Mustache do the splits? In the distance, Captain Nicomedes is indeed practicing the splits, assisted by two helpful Maenads. Athens may have laws, but tonight, dance law ruled supreme. You wake to find the entire street transformed into what can only be described as commercial chaos. Everything must go, Dionysus bellows through a magical amplification system that makes Zeus's thunder sound like a whisper. Divine liquidation, prices so low, Hades thinks they're underground. Purple banners stream from every surface, pulsing with light that spells out different messages in languages that haven't been invented yet. The reason for this sudden sale becomes clear when Charis shows you the eviction notice, written on papyrus so official it practically radiates bureaucracy. The assembly has given us 3 days to vacate, she explains, her eye twitch achieving speeds that could power a small mill. Apparently, dance battling the city guard was the last straw. That and the complaint from the woman who says our wine made her speak only in haikus for a month. Haikus build character, Dionysus insists, already several cups into the inventory. Besides, we're not leaving. We're having the most epic closing sale in mythological history. He gestures grandly, and the shop explodes with divine marketing energy. Wine barrels roll themselves into the street, arranging into pyramid displays. The ceiling vineyard drops grapes that burst into tiny fireworks, spelling sale in the air. The satyrs have embraced their roles as sales staff with disturbing enthusiasm. Kopros wears a sandwich board that reads, "Ask me about our BOGO deals," though he can't explain what BOGO means. Staphylos has created a song about discounts that's somehow both catchy and deeply disturbing. Everything must go, including our sanity. Prices dropping faster than Icarus isn't exactly traditional marketing, but it's effective. Within minutes, word spreads through Athens like wine through white cloth. The street fills with bargain hunters, curiosity seekers, and at least one group of Spartans who claim they're just browsing while aggressively comparing prices. The competition from other wine merchants arrives too, torn between wanting Dionysus gone and unable to resist the deals. Philosopher's Folly, normally 10 drachma, now only 3, Hermes announces, having appointed himself chief auctioneer. He's floating above the crowd, using his divine speed to be everywhere at once. Do I hear 2 drachma for enlightenment? That's less than a mediocre meal. The philosophers in the crowd immediately start a bidding war, arguing about whether enlightenment can be commodified while simultaneously trying to outbid each other. The sale attracts increasingly unusual customers. A delegation from the underworld arrives, sent by Hades, who heard about the underground prices. They're disappointed to learn it's a metaphor, but stay for the Stygian sorrow blend that supposedly pairs well with existential dread. 3 fates show up, arguing about whether they should buy wine for the past, present, or future. They compromise on a variety pack. You watch Athena's accounting owls return, drawn by the mathematical impossibility of the pricing. They perch on the awnings, hooting in confusion as Dionysus sells wine for less than the cost of the containers. It's not about profit, he explains to their bewildered hooting. It's about making a statement. That statement is, Athens, you'll miss me when I'm gone. The real chaos begins when Dionysus introduces Mystery Amphora Hour. Every hour, random containers are buzzed with unexpected properties. A merchant buys what he thinks is cheap table wine and discovers it's truth serum sangria. He immediately confesses to decades of tax evasion, then tries to return the wine while compulsively admitting to other minor crimes. I also stole olives from my neighbor, and I told my wife her new chiton didn't make her look fat when it absolutely did. And a wrestling champion purchases Strength of the Titans for half price and accidentally throws his sparring partner into the stratosphere. The partner lands in the shop of a competing wine merchant, creating Athens' first interbusiness human projectile incident. Legal scholars are still debating liability, while the wrestler apologizes profusely and offers to throw anyone else who wants a quick trip across the city. Sir, I bought this wine, and now I can only speak in rhyming couplets, complains a customer. This is causing major doubts. Charis, who's given up on normal customer service, responds in kind. All sales are final, as stated on the sign. Your speaking in verse is by design. The customer opens his mouth to argue, realizes he's about to rhyme again, and leaves muttering about lawyers and lyrical litigation. The sale reaches peak insanity when the transformational wines go on clearance. Maenad's madness is practically given away, resulting in a spontaneous parade through the financial district. Bankers abandon their counting tables to dance with lampshades. The city treasurer is seen doing the can-can with a bust of Solon. One particularly dignified priest of Apollo buys Bacchic breakthrough and immediately starts a conga line that somehow ends up circumnavigating the entire Acropolis. Dionysus, now glowing like a purple star from sampling his own merchandise, decides to add performance art to the sale. Every purchase comes with a free prophecy, he announces. The prophecies are suspiciously wine-themed. You will meet a tall, dark stranger who recommends a nice Pinot. Beware the Ides of March. They have terrible wine selection. Your future holds great prosperity and a slight hangover. As the sun sets on this commercial catastrophe, the shop is nearly empty. The last few amphorae huddle in corners like abandoned pets. The ceiling vineyard has been harvested clean by opportunistic customers with ladders. Even the singing wine barrels from the inventory disaster have found homes. Though the city will be dealing with reports of harmonizing containers for months, Captain Nicomedes arrives with a full guard contingent to supervise the closing. He's trying to look stern, but is clearly fighting the urge to stock up on discounted wine. This is it, Dionysus, he says, his mustache quivering with official authority. Last day of business? The god smiles, an expression containing multitudes of mischief. Oh, I wouldn't say that. This is just the end of the beginning. The captain looks nervous. What's that supposed to mean? But Dionysus is already directing the final clearance. Everything, including the fixtures, the bar, the shelves, the inexplicable ceiling vines, make an offer, trade acceptable, will consider interpretive dance as payment. By nightfall, Divine Vintages is stripped bare. Customers carry away everything not nailed down, and several things that were. Someone has purchased the door. Another bought the concept of Tuesday from the shop calendar and is still trying to figure out how to transport it. The building stands empty except for Dionysus, his core staff, and the lingering scent of fermented dreams. So, Charis asks, looking around the hollow space that once held divine chaos. What now? Dionysus grins, pulling out a small grape seed that glows with inner light. Now we plant this somewhere else and watch Athens realize what they've lost. He tosses the seed into the air where it disappears in a sparkle of purple light. Somewhere in the city, a new vineyard is already beginning to grow, and the authorities don't even know it yet. You stand in the empty shell of what was once Divine Vintages, watching Dionysus conduct what he calls his exit interview with the universe. The god sits cross-legged in the center of the bare floor, surrounded by the ghosts of spilled wine, stains that form a mandala of his brief attempt at mortality. The last amphora, too ugly to sell even at divine liquidation prices, serves as his throne. It's painted with a scene of satyrs doing something anatomically improbable with grapes. You know what I learned? Dionysus asks the assembled remnants of his staff. The satyrs, exhausted from the sale, sprawl around him like discarded fur coats. Charis leans against the empty doorframe, still clutching her accounting scrolls like worry beads. I learned that mortals have created something more intoxicating than wine, bureaucracy. It's like a hangover that comes with forms. The autumn wind blows through the glassless windows, carrying the sounds of Athens, returning to its pre-divine normal. Already, you can hear merchants hawking regular, non-transformative wine. The philosophical debates have returned to abstract concepts instead of wine-induced revelations. The city guard patrols without spontaneous dance breaks. It's orderly, predictable, and somehow sadder. At least we gave them stories, Kopros offers, picking at his hooves. That time I turned someone into a fountain of wine, Staphylos adds, or when those Egyptians taught us beer pong. The stories flow like the wine once did, the customer who paid in prophecies, the day it rained inside but only rosé, the philosopher who achieved enlightenment but forgot it by morning. Hermes appears in a flash of divine PR spinning. The other gods are calling it Dionysus's folly, he reports. Zeus is pretending he predicted this outcome all along. Athena's writing a thesis on why divine mortal commerce is doomed to fail. Apollo composed a ballad. It's very long and rhymes bankruptcy with divine decree, which doesn't actually rhyme, but he's making it work through sheer force of godhood. Let them laugh, Dionysus says, but there's no bitterness in it. I brought wonder to their workshops. I made accountants dance and guards giggle. For one glorious month, Athens remembered that life is more than just survival. It's about the divine madness in every mortal soul. He stands, brushing imaginary dust from his wine-stained robes. Besides, I'm not done. He reveals his plan with the theatrical flair of someone who's never met a subtle moment he couldn't dramatize. The grape seed he threw during the liquidation, it's taken root in a dozen secret locations across Athens. Private homes where satisfied customers saved a cutting from the ceiling vines. Back alleys where spilled divine wine has awakened dormant soil. Even in the assembly building, where a clerk who enjoyed the bureaucrat's bliss blend has been nurturing a small vine in a pot marked official parliamentary fern. You can close a shop, Dionysus explains, his eyes swirling with purple possibility. But you can't close an idea. Every time someone in Athens opens a bottle of mortal wine and remembers what divine wine tasted like, I'm there. Every time a merchant waters down his product and feels a twinge of guilt, I'm there. Every time a guard starts to march and accidentally makes it a dance step, Kopros interrupts with a bleat of joy. We're everywhere. The exodus from the empty shop becomes a strange funeral procession. The Maenads arrive to collect their god, but they're not mourning, they're celebrating. Back to the mountains? One asks. Dionysus shakes his head. Back to the beginning, back to reminding mortals that rules are just suggestions and joy is a rebellion. They dance away, leaving purple footprints that will confuse archaeologists for centuries. Charis surprises everyone by hugging Dionysus goodbye. It was insane, she says, completely impractical, financially ruinous, and logistically impossible. She pauses. It was the best job I ever had. She's keeping one bottle of practical magic, the only wine that helped her survive satyr management. She'll open it in 30 years, and her grandchildren won't believe the stories. As the shop stands empty, something strange happens. The wine stains on the floor begin to glow, just slightly. The lingering scent of fermented dreams intensifies. For a moment, just a moment, you can hear the echo of every laugh, every song, every transformation that happened here. The walls remember the man who found love in a dolphin, the grandmother who outdanced satyrs, the priest who discovered doubt tastes like freedom. Captain Nicomedes arrives for the final inspection. He stands in the doorway, his official stance undermined by the small bottle of law and order Blundon hidden in his cloak. By the authority of Athens, I declare this establishment officially closed, he announces to the empty room. Then, quieter and officially unforgettable, he leaves a single flower on the threshold, a private tribute to the place that taught him authority could dance. Years from now, the building will house a respectable olive oil shop, but customers will complain about strange dreams after visiting. The owner will find wine that appears overnight, labeled with names like Remember When and What Could Have Been. Children will dare each other to dance in the corner where reality still feels thin. And once a year, on the anniversary of the great liquidation sale, purple mist will seep from the floorboards and the whole building will smell like possibilities. Dionysus's wine shop failed by every mortal measure. The accounting was impossible, the staff unemployable, the product literally transformative in ways commerce couldn't contain. But it succeeded in ways no business plan could capture. It reminded Athens that efficiency isn't everything, that madness has its own wisdom, that sometimes the best response to regulation is rhythmic movement. You take one last look at the empty space that briefly held divinity retail. Tomorrow, Athens will pretend it was all a collective hallucination brought on by bad well water. The philosophers will rationalize the transformations. The merchants will return to honest dishonesty. But tonight, as purple stars wink in the sky, stars that definitely weren't there before, the city dreams of wine that tastes like revolution. The god of wine didn't open a successful shop. He opened a door in reality, sold tickets to transformation, and reminded mortals that their rules only matter if they choose to follow them. The shop is closed. The party, as Dionysus would say, is eternal, and somewhere in Athens, a forgotten grapeseed cracks through pavement, ready to grow into the next beautiful disaster. Wind down as you drift away from ancient Athens. The images soften like wine diluting in water. The sounds of the marketplace fade into a gentle hum, like bees drowsing in the late afternoon sun. Your breathing naturally slows as you watch the last purple twilight settle over the city's rooftops. The cobblestones beneath your feet transform into soft clouds, carrying you gently from the world of gods and mortals. The laughter of satyrs becomes distant wind chimes, melodic and soothing. The purple glow of divine wine dims to the soft luminescence of fireflies dancing in a summer garden. You feel yourself floating, cradled by the ancient stories that have been told and retold for thousands of years. Each tale is a thread in the great tapestry of human imagination, weaving dreams of what happens when heaven tries to run a small business. Let the last traces of transformation wine leave your system, replaced by the warm comfort of ordinary drowsiness. The mad god's purple eyes close, his cosmic party finally winding down to a gentle lullaby. The Maenad's wild dances slow to swaying wheat in evening breeze. Even the chaos settles into peaceful patterns, like cream swirling lazily in morning coffee. You're safe here in your bed, far from divine revelry and mythological customer service disasters. But you carry with you the gentle reminder that sometimes, just sometimes, the best things in life come from beautiful failures. That wonder can be worth more than profit. That dance can defeat authority. That a god's worst business venture might be humanity's best memory. Sleep comes on soft cat feet, patting through your thoughts and smoothing away the day's sharp edges. Dream, if you like, of purple wine and impossible transformations, or simply rest in the knowledge that somewhere in the timeless realm of story, Dionysus is still pouring drinks that taste like liquid starlight, still teaching mortals that joy is the finest rebellion. The stars wheel overhead, normal stars now, not purple ones that wink with divine mischief. Your story for tonight is complete, wrapped up like a gift with a bow made of grapevines. Tomorrow will bring its own tales, but for now, rest. Let sleep's gentle vintage carry you to morning. Sweet dreams, dear listener. May your sleep be deep and your dreams be just wild enough to remind you that somewhere between order and chaos, between prophet and poetry, between mortal and divine. There's a sweet spot where life tastes exactly as it should, like possibility itself, fermented to perfection.